Hello and welcome to Forge & Foster's Q1 market update. My name is Ben Ames and I am Chief Investment Officer at Forge & Foster. I am here to moderate our presentation today. We are very excited for this specific presentation, mostly because of the snow on the ground today and the fact that we're dreaming of future summer days, hopefully coming sooner rather than later. But also to talk about the specifics around the economics of the cottage real estate market. They're currently fascinating. There's been a lot of growth recently, and excited to have someone here with the expertise in just exactly what is going on with those markets. But also we have a new partner with Forge & Foster in True North Tiny Homes. Very excited to learn a little bit more about this tiny home movement, to discuss projects that are on the go and how you can own your own tiny home. And that brings me to our first speaker today, Daniel Ott, the owner of True North Tiny Homes. Daniel designs, builds, and sells affordable, versatile, stylish, and sustainable tiny homes for communities across Ontario. Daniel, as mentioned, will be discussing the tiny home movement. He'll talk about some projects that he and us at Forge & Foster have on the go, and all of the logistics around owning a tiny home. There's more than you think. And our second speaker today is Mandy Charlton. Mandy is a real estate agent with Rebel Realty here in Muskoka. Mandy has managed a successful photography business and also manages and brands two successful waterfront rental properties in Muskoka and Bancroft. Mandy will be discussing the real estate markets in Muskoka and the surrounding areas. We'll be talking about how you can have your cottage up north and get away from the city COVID grind. So very, very interesting discussions today. Lots of deep value in our discussion today. So if you have any questions about anything, please leave them in the comments on the YouTube page and we'll address them at the end of our talk. But first up, per usual, Forge & Foster's very own Alex Manojlovic is going to talk about the state of the Hamilton and surrounding real estate markets, as well as noteworthy updates that you should be aware of. Very excited for this one, as the markets have been absolutely crazy over the past 4 months. Tons of growth, not sure what's going on. Alex is going to tell us all about it. So with that, Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome everyone again. And Ben is absolutely correct in saying that it's been an absolutely wild ride currently for this past quarter in the real estate market. And similar to how we kind of try and frame our research, especially now, is how has COVID really affected today's market? And then what can we learn from this past quarter and from the year prior to really inform what's going to happen for the future. So these are numbers that I'm going to be comparing, so quarter by quarter and year over year. So the copper color is current value. So this past quarter, Q1 of 2021, Hamilton witnessed $281 million worth of commercial real estate volume that it transacted. And you look at this compared to last quarter, $395 million, absolutely massive number from last quarter. It was the biggest quarter in Hamilton's history. It was really buoyed by the Center Mall transaction of $150 million. So nothing to worry about the vast difference in those two numbers. But where the real value is comparing it year over year to the previous quarter. As you saw from 2020, we had a value of $212 million transact. So a huge number increase between year over year, a difference of $70 million. And the average Q1 value that we typically see in Hamilton, this is dating back to 2017, is about $188 million per Q1. So Hamilton smashed it this past Q1 by $100 million over its average. And this has been since 2017 the largest amount of commercial real estate that is transacted in any Q1 for Hamilton. So a great Q1 overall if you're just looking at it from a dollars perspective. And here's a graph that really breaks down every quarter for the last 5 years, beginning of Q1 of 2017. And this really kind of shows you a gauge of how if you look at the very right, our Q1 of 2021 really kind of stacks up against the previous quarters. So you'll notice that there's some other vertical bars that are highlighted lightly in yellow. So those signify other Q1s that you can kind of compare to our previous Q1. And you can see since 2017, every Q1 has incrementally increased. And you can see, as I mentioned just now, the most recent Q1 was the largest on record. And then if you can kind of decipher through all this information, what the typical trend is the Q1, it has the smallest amount of dollar volume that really transacts. So it's typically like the slowest amount of the time of the year for commercial real estate, at least for Hamilton. And then Q2, Q3 is up and down. They're really kind of neck and neck. And then Q4s are really where the end of the year, I should say, is really where things pick up usually for the markets. So to compare Q1 to Q4 isn't so much, but it really kind of goes to show how much of a high we really left on from the previous year. And as you'll see as we go through the presentation, it's really kind of seeing that this wave has continued through Q1. So how many transactions took place? So this again is specifically for any commercial real estate transaction of over $500,000 that took place in Hamilton. So 77 transactions took place this past quarter compared to last quarter of 81, and then compared to last year of transactions of 88. So year over year, we had 11 less transactions, but we had $70 million more worth of commercial real estate volume. And that's an absolute massive difference right there. And this is also interesting too, because the average transaction number for Q1 Hamilton is 81. So we're slightly below average. I would say just it's pretty negligible. It's about average. So we had about an average amount of transactions, but a huge dollar volume. And this really kind of translates into what we said from our 2020 year-end update, where we're starting to see less transactions, but huge values that are transacting. And this is because of two things. One, you're seeing just assets naturally just increase in value, but also we're seeing larger assets also transact in the Hamilton market now as well. And I'm going to try and decipher this graph for you. I tried to do it as best I can to explain it as best I can, but on the very right shows you 2021, and then from moving on to the left shows you the subsequent years. So this is looking at transactions per month just to try and gauge how healthy a quarter it was for 2021. So as you can see, for 2021, only 20 transactions took place in January, so very, very low. And then in February, shot back up to almost a high. And then in March, kind of averaged out. So as I mentioned before, 77 about average, and this is kind of how it really took place for Q1. So my last graph here is looking at the specific asset classes and comparing it year after year. So the white bars represent Q1 of 2020, and then the copper bars represent Q1 of 2021. So looking at going through each asset class, so land, ICI, institutional, commercial, industrial, and this is usually always industrial, or a vast majority of industrial land. And you can see Q1 2020, absolutely massive demand for industrial land, and that has not changed whatsoever for this year as well. Residential land, this is always fluctuating, but always in demand. As you can see, is almost touched $50 million this year for residential land. Every type of residential asset is in demand, and we'll get into that further on. Industrial, admittedly kind of a poor year last year, just to compare to industrial, but this year it was absolutely a hot year, or I should say this quarter was absolutely a hot year for industrial. There's one prominent industrial piece that traded for $17 million in Stony Creek, and it was the biggest industrial deal of this quarter. Mixed use is exactly where it usually is, and this, when I say mixed use, sometimes you see that term applied to any residential development that's happening right now that's like of a high height. But this is what I kind of attribute to those like regular downtown brick and beam properties you might find in Hamilton that kind of constitute a retail at the grade, and then maybe a couple floors of residential above. And then I'm going to skip multi-res for a second just to kind of compare retail and office. Absolutely minimal years this year for both those asset classes, and we've always been hearing for at least a year or two now, especially for retail, really the demise of it. And this quarter has really just shown just in the lack of transactions and values that retail is not in people's eyes right now, especially when you compare it to last year's time. And then with office, This is a bit skewed. Yes, it is a down quarter for office purchases, but what really pumps up Q20's office purchases is two very significant purchases. One was the Formerton Hamilton Spectator Building, which was purchased by McMaster Innovation Park, and then a collection of 5 other office buildings on that same Frid Street by Fortune Foster last year as well. And those were $20 million plus acquisitions each. So that really obviously influences that graph there. And then going one back to multi-residential, again, similar to industrial last year, also a down year for multi-residential purchases, but absolutely a massive year for multi-residential existing asset classes. Usually you see land res being the higher of the two, just because it might be a bit harder to attain large multi-residential assets right now in Hamilton because they're really going fast and they're really in high demand. But this year still, people are still trying to get their hands on them right now, as you can evidently see with this much activity. It was the highest grossing asset class for Hamilton this past quarter. So now I'm going to dive into the top 3 transactions, and this is by dollar volume that transpired in Hamilton for the past quarter. So the third most expensive transaction that took place was this parking lot located right downtown Hamilton. It's called 41 Wilson Street. It was purchased for just over $20 million. It has a new downtown zoning that facilitates development. It's over an acre, so massive chunk of land, and it was purchased for just a hair under $12 million an acre, which is the prices that you're starting to see for land that can facilitate a development of up to 30 stories. As you can see here, it's zoned for 29. And the buyer here is First Avenue Investment Council, and they're based out of Toronto. And also this past quarter, they also purchased this sliver as well. So you can really see they're starting to really assemble this site. And just to go into, I think this is a great segue just to talk about the condo market in general, because there's some question marks about how that's happening in Hamilton. So I want to point to First Avenue Council's other investment that was purchased earlier, I want to say in 2020. And this is One Jarvis. This is a proposed condominium. This is a rendering. And it's 15 stories, so half the height of what potentially could be built at 41 Wilson Street. It's located just a few blocks east of 41 Wilson Street. 377 units, so a lot amount of units for this size of asset. And I've heard from multiple people that it sold out in one day. So just absolutely crazy to see this many units in this short amount of time. I've never heard of it before, especially in a COVID market where you look at places like Toronto, where you're seeing even condo values starting to devalue earlier in 2020. Right now, you're starting to see it pick back up again. But Hamilton, incredible to see this type of attraction for this type of asset class. I also want to point to Kiwi condos, and so this picture was taken a few days ago. So evidently, it's under construction. Similar height, different developer. It's Rosehaven. Also, smaller amount of units. So there's bigger. The units themselves are slightly larger. And this kind of gap in the sky right here is where One Jarvis is going to be. So right beside Kiwi condos. And soon after One Jarvis sold out, the remaining units in Kiwi condos sold out. So just kind of further solidifying the demand for condo units in Hamilton right now. This is a price list I had kind of gathered from One Jarvis, and I just tried to break it down as best I can. And I would have said pre-pandemic, condo values for a brand new condominium, potentially with parking too, would have been around $625 a square foot. And then for the majority of 2020, that value really kind of stayed. There was really no big demand for condo values. A lot of inventory was flooded into the market because people are looking for bigger homes, and what now has kickstarted into this really rapid housing market. And as you can see here, the values very, very much so, but I would say it's still easy to see that the average value for what One Jarvis was able to garner based off this price list was $750 a square foot for a condo, which is incredible to see. Again, that crazy demand to see it sell out in one day. And then also what I would say set a new standard potentially for the average dollar per square foot value for a brand new condo in Hamilton. And then this article just came out in March as well. Hamilton condo prices appear to be cooling, even though sales nearly triple. So this is incredible to see, even though if you think that condo values are diminishing. I should also preface this article also takes into account existing condos that have been here for decades as well, rather than what the prices I just mentioned and show in the price list are for brand new condos. So Hamilton, as it says here, I highlighted, Hamilton has nearly tripled the amount of condo sales transactions compared to the same time last year. And then a broker of record at Strata, which is the people that produce this article, points out the price per square foot is currently sitting around 500. February had a record high of 535. And they talked about August of last year, where the condo inventory hit its peak, and in that month alone, 152 units were put up for sale. And this makes sense. People are trying to get rid of condos, again, upgrade to a home, get a backyard, and potentially an office to work from. But since then, that number of listings has been on the steady decline throughout the winter. Downtown Hamilton remains one of the most expensive neighborhoods, with condos selling at about $567 per square foot, considerably higher than the city average of $500 a square foot. So this article also confirms that the activity is there. Again, this also kind of has a broader lens of every condo asset available, not just the brand new ones. So really amazing to see for this market. And a majority of the reason why there's so much attraction to the condo market very recently in Hamilton is because the housing market is absolutely on fire right now in Hamilton, and it's driving people to look for more affordable options right now. So this article came out just a few days ago. I had to include it in this presentation, but Hamilton, along with Halifax, is leading the charge in housing values for the country. Halifax #1, Hamilton #2 for this past March. So you can see month over month, Hamilton had price increases of 2.8%, and then year over year had an increase of almost 21% for housing values. So absolutely astonishing numbers. And just to show the Realtors Association latest information for March, you can take a look at any area of Hamilton, and you'll see a massive amount of number of sales, more than double in most cases of number of transactions. And the value is absolutely out of this world too. So even the first one, if you look at Hamilton West, 49 transactions took place in 2020 versus 2021 of 117. And you see the former value in 2020, $550,000 was the average home in Hamilton West, and now it's almost $700,000. One of my favorites to look at here is Ancaster, 72 transactions versus 100 this most recently. Was the average home was $774,000, and now it's over 1.1 million. And you look at Burlington, it was worth more last year than Ancaster, and now it's worth less than Ancaster, but still an average home in Burlington is almost $1.1 million. Absolutely insane. And this is the case for any of these locations if you look at in the Hamilton area. Going back to the transactions that took place in Hamilton this past quarter, the second most expensive transaction was this piece of industrial land right off of Highway 6. And this is right by the Hamilton Airport, went for almost $24 million, 85 acres, selling for $276,000 an acre. Has a specific airport zoning associated with it, and a big buyer and Sun Life Assurance was the purchaser. They've also purchased this piece of land as well to really create what's being looked at as this kind of new business park that's being called the 4036 Business Park. And I should mention that $276,000 an acre is a little bit more expensive than we typically see for unserviced land around the airport. There is a precedent of land around the airport selling for around $200,000 an acre. So they see it go for 270. Again, shows that appreciation of value that we're starting to see year over year now in Hamilton. And really interesting to see what their plans are for this site. Obviously, it seems to be some sort of fulfillment center or various industrial kind of storage warehousing type buildings. It's going to be almost 2 million square feet in total. So absolutely massive amount of inventory that's going to be injected in the market, but it's absolutely warranted and asked for. So some of the smaller buildings that they're preparing here, they're going to be asking for almost $10 square foot net, which is an incredible rate. So, and it seems to be being similar rates garnered for Panettone's current development that's going to be facilitating Amazon. And in some of their larger assets are between $8 and $9 a square foot. And then really incredible to see that some of the excess land for sale that they're putting up is being asked between $800,000 and $900,000 an acre, which is absolutely incredible to see. So typically service land that's a bit smaller that they're kind of breaking up into here. We see in Hamilton this year, it's always going up. It's going up at a fantastic pace. But I would say right now, for that type of land that they're pricing, it's normally around $700,000 an acre. So to see them list, or based on this pamphlet at least, 800 to 900,000, it absolutely kind of trying to set the market, and I think they can achieve it. It'll be interesting to see if they can do it. And then my last slide and the last transaction I want to talk about, and the highest transaction or the most expensive transaction that took place in Q1 of this year is 125 Wellington Street North and 50 Cathcart Street North. This is an existing multi-residential building in Hamilton. And as we mentioned, multi-residential was the highest asset this year, or asset class that took place this year. And a big driver was this. We almost hit a total of $90 million worth of multi-residential purchases this past quarter. And this is obviously a big component of 54 million. So we still have about 40 million left over if you were to remove this, which is still a sizable chunk allocated for this to this asset class. And even if you remove that from the total of 280 million, I still put it at $230 million, and it still would be a record Q1 for Hamilton. So back to this specific transaction, it's 360 units. 18 stories. So 50 Cathcart's just on the other side of here. It's attached to it, but it's a 6-story building purchased by Equiton, which is a group out of Burlington. Got a great value for this, as we mentioned in our year-end update. The average for 2019 for a suite was $140,000, and it skyrocketed to $180,000 a suite in 2020, and that's just due to the growing value in multi-residential right now. So it does look to be well maintained from the previous vendor, but obviously there's still some upside here, which made it attractive for this buyer. And something that we're starting to see now become more and more of a story is buyers like Equiton, people from Hamilton. They based on the article I read, the founder seems to be from Hamilton, has their business mainly in Burlington, and we're seeing a lot of similar buyers entering the market that have roots in Hamilton, gone off to go somewhere else to really kind of jumpstart their career, whether it be the GTA or Toronto or wherever. And now it's starting to come back to Hamilton and really taking a shining to it, and really have like an inherent wanting to really kind of improve the city and come back. And as we mentioned in 2020 year in review, even looking at the buyers that like Equiton, Sun Life, First Avenue Council, we're just starting to see larger buyers, which are really influencing the prices, and the values starting to increase year over year. So that's it for me. Thanks everyone for watching my presentation, and I'm going to pass it on to Ben to give it to Daniel's presentation.
Wow, incredible, Alex. That there's a lot of data to unpack. I guess just to summarize everything, we're seeing residential prices close to doubling in some cases, but they seem to be up across the board. The number of transactions you mentioned are similar, correct? But it's this institutional money that's coming into the areas that's driving the value increase.
Yeah, so I think we've been seeing mostly a trend where the amount of transactions per year are going down, but we're seeing values go up. Like I said, so we had $280 million transact this past quarter compared to 212 last year. But we had 11 more transactions last year, and that seems to be the pattern that's going year after year. So I think it's because one, values are just naturally increasing. So the asset you purchased 5 years ago is inherently worth more now. And two, we're seeing a lot of bigger players that are looking for bigger acquisitions. So you're seeing people like First Avenue Council that are buying a parking lot in Hamilton, and that just wasn't the case 5 years ago. And so there's a real keen eye for more so than now, I would argue, even during COVID, to start development in Hamilton. As you can see, just this past March, we're second most leaders in the country for housing values. And so really shows that the people are trying to move here, and there's just no inventory right now. And so now, even in a climate where you think condos aren't desirable, and it's not the case, that everyone is looking for any type of living space right now.
Yeah, makes sense. Incredible. Thank you very much. Our next speaker today is Daniel Ott. Daniel Ott, the owner of True North Tiny Homes. I have just one question for you before we get started, Daniel. How are you getting internet reception on your yacht out in the middle of the lake?
Someday I'm going to thank Elon Musk for that, but right now I can't even go recreational boating with COVID, so I really disappointed about that. So I can only live virtually at this point. So
right. Well, we're very excited to hear more from you, and with that, please take it away.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Alex, for your presentation as well. So, yeah, True North Tiny Homes. This has been a journey, and it's really just started, really. I've been in residential construction for 20 years, and that's why Fortune Foster talked to me, because I've been in residential for so long and can bring a different twist to this the investment market, really. Love the picture that you're seeing there of me. You can see the cottage country in the background. This is a tiny home that we actually created as a cottage. You watch our YouTube channel, Upside Down, that is Princess. But tiny homes is really a culmination of everything that my wife and I have done over the last 20 years, and really brought us to a point of this is what we really see where we can help the most people. Our mission is to create affordable, appropriate housing for as many people as possible. And that appropriate thing is very important. We're not just creating affordable housing, we're creating affordable housing that's appropriate for a lot different people than what you'd normally think of as just providing subsidized housing, for instance. There are people doing that. We're in a different lane here. So I like to say we build high-end tiny homes that meet the Ontario Building Code and your local bylaws. And that's really a few really key differences on what we do compared to what most people do. Ontario is the hardest place in Ontario, in North America, sorry, to build and meet all the criteria and restrictions. And so no one else really wants to touch it. Because we've been doing regular houses for 20 years, moving into the smaller home market really makes a lot of sense. And it was kind of a natural transition, because we used to do bigger houses and they kept getting into smaller and smaller spaces, or creating more and more units within a single family dwelling. And we thought 3 years ago, where is this going to go? How is this going to change the landscape of investment in residential real estate? And the idea was, if we can put a separate building in everybody's backyard, that is going to be where we can help the most people. So that's kind of why we started. We have yet to actually put a tiny home in the backyard in Hamilton, where we are, but we're doing it all over the board, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But really, why we're in this space is really the same reason why there's so much demand in it right now. I'm seeing from private clients, let's call them, so separate from investors, private clients, I'm seeing over 50 leads per week coming in right now of people who want tiny homes. The market is just, it's crazy, and it's because of how high residential real estate has gone. People are looking for this as the next affordable thing. So for the next few years, for sure, this is going to be a trend that we're going to see skyrocketing. It might plateau off in 5 years. It might just keep going up, but we're gonna ride that wave as long as we can. That's for sure. Next slide, Alex. So what is a tiny home? So when we talk to our marketing, we're building tiny homes because it's a really trendy term. Everyone loves it, but we're not. Tiny homes as a legal definition doesn't even exist. So when we talk to the municipalities or anyone in a bureaucratic position, we're building accessory dwelling units, garden suites, granny flats, a laneway house, coach house, or a park model home is our latest thing. We're literally building the same thing. We're certifying it as something different when it exits the door of a factory based on where we're going and what criteria we need to meet. But the idea is, even when it comes to a park model home, we're building to a much higher standard than what most people would think of as a park model home. We're just certifying it down here so that we can meet the zoning from the lot. Next slide. This is what we're not doing. This is what I was talking about. Tiny homes on wheels. One of the criteria in Ontario is that you can't actually live in a vehicle, and a vehicle is deemed to be anything with wheels. So even the park model home, part of the standard for park model homes that we're doing in a lot of these villages that we're going to be as soon as we can start getting some materials. A lot of these parks that Fortune Foster are buying, we have to take the wheels off, but it has to be on a trailer chassis. So it's kind of like this catch-22. We have to put it on a trailer to meet the criteria for the standard, but then we have to take the wheels off so we can meet the Ontario laws. It really doesn't make any common sense whatsoever, but we are working with it. Next slide, Alex. So few different pictures here, as you can see, but we are building the Ontario Building Code. You can see the little house on the trailer on the left there. You can see straps if you look closely. That house doesn't stay on that trailer. We take the trailer out from under it and pop it on a foundation. That's the way to do a legal actual house in Ontario. And that particular unit is Ontario's smallest legal house. And that's a certification actually for A277, which we'll get into in a second. But this also happens to be the footprint that fits in almost every Hamilton backyard as a secondary dwelling. Little note on that, by the way, last night Hamilton voted in favor. There was only one councillor that voted against, and they voted in favor of accepting the new bylaw of basically allowing a tiny home in every backyard in Hamilton. So this is going to be huge. That gives us somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 more potential clients for properties. So that's awesome. The picture on the right is actually a unit Ford and Foster have purchased as an office and as a kind of model home. This would be what we would deem our bachelor model for a Z241. Again, looking at this, this is not what you would think of as a park model home. This is being built to a high-end luxury home, often backsplash, quartz counters, stainless steel appliances. We're trying to do a really nice job. One of the maxims that we throw all over our walls and our t-shirts here is just because you're living small doesn't mean you can't live in luxury. So next slide. So the next few of these are actually some of the models that we've created to be Z241. However, we can also, if we're building the same thing, we're just certifying it differently, this can be someone's house. So we really are coming up with really small footprints for what you can do with 2 bedrooms plus bath, 1 bath home here, 473 square feet in front of you. And where else can you find a 2 bedroom brand new house for the prices that we're looking at here? And when you can efficiently create and build in a factory and then ship it to site, it's way more cost effective. And then your returns on your rent are far greater than if you say we're doing a basement apartment. Some of the places that we can do this as a primary residence. So we develop these models as Z241s, like I said, for the park model homes for the parks that we're going to be doing with Forge and Foster. But we can put these literally anywhere. So I've actually sold some of these ideas to people across Ontario. So some of the places where we are doing secondary suites right now, Kitchener, London, Lincoln Township, and New Tecumseh. New Tecumseh is a weird one, kind of falls outside all of these other things, but more of these urban areas, and Hamilton, of course, are where we can do secondary dwellings on all of these properties. But in the more rural areas, they're actually getting rid of their minimum house sizes, and we can start doing tiny homes as principal residences. And these include anywhere from Meaford in the Collingwood area right through that strip up to Barrie. A lot of those places we can now put, there's no minimum house size anymore for primary residence. Hay Valley Township was the first one in Ontario. Norfolk County down by Lake Erie, no minimum house sizes. And the biggest one that we had going, let's say, against the tiny home movement was the Muskokas, made up of 6 townships. And that some of their minimum house sizes were 2,500 square feet. Well, just a few weeks ago, they voted in favor of 2 of the townships getting rid of their minimum house size. So that's huge. So now we can actually put tiny homes as principal residences in the Muskokas as well. Next slide. So these are some of the views of what we're trying to, the renderings of the units that we're going to be building. So again, trying to go on the high end look here for affordable, appropriate housing. Next slide. So this is my favorite because of what we can do additionally to this. So the Driftwood here, we've got 1 bedroom plus bath, and we got a large living space, same size, but we just didn't put the bedroom wall in. And click the next slide, Alex. this is a few more looks of it. But what's really cool here is if we go to the last slide, we can throw additions on it. So now all of a sudden it's throwing a 2-bedroom plus bath addition onto this unit. And this is regardless of whether it's a park model home or a primary residence somewhere. This would definitely not fit as a secondary dwelling on a property in Hamilton, I'll tell you that. But as a primary residence somewhere, this is awesome because we can throw additions on it. Where else can you find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home for under $400,000? So this is just awesome. We've got a few different additions that we can throw on, but this is the most distinct, beautiful way to live. Then what I would do on this one is I'd probably throw the door a little over and make that for the bedroom and make that a master suite with an ensuite. So, yeah, that concludes my presentation. There's a lot of potential in this industry and in this market, and we want to be here to help bring it about, especially now.
Amazing. Thank you, Daniel. Obviously excited to have struck up this partnership. The design and the quality is absolutely stunning, and it's very, very smart way to approach living. So we're very excited on our side, and certainly the quality rings true through the presentation. Next up, we have Mandy Charlton, Mandy of Rebel Realty. Mandy, I'm sure I'm not alone in down here in the cities saying that I'd love in Muskoka or Bracebridge area. There's been an insane amount of demand, and everything we're seeing on our side is prices up. But obviously, you would have a little more insight and experience in the last few months, and please let us know kind of what the market's at right now and how best to approach it.
For sure. Thanks, guys. So we're seeing, oh, can you guys hear me okay? So Alex, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So right now, we're not really calling this the Wild Wild West up here with real estate. We're calling it the Wild Wild North. Few key factors to what's going on in real estate here in Muskoka. We're seeing a huge push from the south. Obviously, people in the city are wanting to divest themselves of their inventory there. We're seeing a lot of cash buyers coming up and scooping up waterfront properties. A lot of the buyers coming from the city are paying cash. They have no conditions. Everything's going firm, no inspections. This is something that we have really never seen up here, especially given inspections and people not knowing a lot about the ways that we do things here on waterfront, septic, well water, lake water, how things work in the winter here, because we do get quite frigid. Sometimes we can dip below -26. And, we were seeing a lot of clients were saying to us, how come there's no inventory for the past 3 months? Well, it's been winter here. A lot of places here in Muskoka aren't accessible in the winter. Water's not on, there's seasonal roads, they're not being plowed. So how do you go and view properties when you can't get to them? So we're seeing obviously high demand for properties, low inventory like everywhere else across the province. Interest rates are at a record low. Anybody can pretty much get a mortgage these days and be able to pay for it. So we were seeing a lot of that. I'll also mention that we were seeing prices, we still are currently, places, waterfront properties especially, are selling $300 upwards to $500,000 over asking currently. And we're talking about properties that need to be either torn down or need at least that much in renovations. So it's really hard for people to kind of get in there and get a foothold in the market currently. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you about what happened here in March for waterfront properties alone. So sales in March alone, there was 210 units that sold. This was more than double the levels of last year's sales in March. So that was a 223.1% increase, which blew all of us out of the water here. New sales record for March. If you look at the graph on the right there, for median days on market, you'll see that the average was 10 days on market. So we're seeing most places, holding offers after 7 days. Some are doing it 6, some are doing it 10. If you look at 2015, the average days on market, hovered around 70. So, even from 2020 to 21, average days on market were cut in half. When the pandemic first started, everybody talked about real estate, it was going to plummet. And, a lot of us thought that we would be having to look for part-time work or, figure out something else, but we went the complete opposite. I know buyers agents like myself have been nonstop since the pandemic started. You just keep going. I have a lot of buyers right now. I have one buyer in particular who has put in 17 offers and he still has not won a property yet. The most recent one we offered on went for 500 over asking. In a normal market, I would say the place was probably worth about, what it was listed at, but it's crazy. I can't even keep up with it. I can't even tell you guys, adequately. Things change here every day. If you look at my next piece of tidbit information there, a year-to-date basis. So for the last 3 months, we sold 397 units. Again, more than double the levels than the same period last year in March and January and February. Next slide, please. The median price right now going for waterfront properties is at a record of $872,000. So, a lot of this is being driven up. We're seeing most pricing at around 500 and up for places. But again, if they're selling over asking by 300, that's where we're getting this 800,000 from. You can see last year in March, prices have risen since then by 64%. It's insane. We thought 2020 was a busy year. 2021 is the growth is phenomenal. So you can see there, the other part, total dollar value for waterfront sales in March was $228.4 million. So again, another double from the year before. It was also a record-setting statistic for March. Next slide, please. So some of the trends that we're seeing, and I'm certainly seeing with my clientele, is a lot of people are purchasing properties for rental and investment. I myself, as mentioned, I have 2 of my own. I luckily bought these before the pandemic hit, renovated them, styled them, and have been renting them. I can tell you that even the people that are coming and visiting my Airbnbs, obviously not currently with the stay-at-home order, but previously we booked 2 years in advance. Now we're even having people reaching out to us for 2024. People are desperate to get away. I've had people offer me more money to stay at my properties to bump other reservations out. I have had, I couldn't even tell you how many people are on our waiting list right now. I think it's hovering around 100. People just need to get away from their 4 walls that they're in, whether that be, in the city, a condo, a house. I think people just need a change of pace. And I think that's why there's this push to come to Muskoka and go north, just because everybody's been stuck in their house for over a year. People are looking for something different. And, if they can sell their house, like you were saying in Ancaster, the average pricing, is 1 million. If you can sell for 1 million and then come up here and buy something that's on the water for, let's say, 800,000, you're still ahead of the game. You've got 200,000, to play with there for renos or toys, or, when you move up here, you need all the toys. But the other trend we're seeing is fractional properties. So fractional properties are where you own intervals of time at a resort style location, again, on the water. It's all inclusive usually at fractional properties. You can rent these as well, but we're seeing this as being more of a affordable way of getting a foothold in Muskoka. These range from anywhere from $80,000 and up. And most of them have 5 weeks a year that you have ownership. So you would be like 1/10 of an owner of the property, let's say. The other trend we're seeing is people purchasing vacant land and then building, like Daniel does, with the tiny homes and stuff like that. We're seeing the push, because again, vacant land, while it's still selling over asking, it still can be more affordable for an option for some, depending on their price point. But again, like I said, we're seeing those sell over. And then obviously we're hearing a lot of building delays right now as well. Price of lumber has gone up. You know, what used to be, we used to have around, I think around $234 a square foot to build a home here. You know, they're now talking about it being close to $350 a square foot. And the delays they're saying about 3 years now, given building permits and trying to get those, as well as finding a contractor here. The running joke is if you can find a contractor up here that's available, he's probably not that good. So just a couple of things to consider. You know, I personally have a lot of clients that are looking for both, you know, waterfront with a structure or just vacant land to build something on. And we're trying to find ways of, I'll say, finding them a property that's within their budget, but also not getting into these crazy bidding wars. But there's really no way around it. Almost, I'm going to say 98% of properties being sold right now in Muskoka are all holding offers. And it's definitely a seller's market. Next slide, please. So some of my predictions for the year to come, unfortunately, my crystal ball broke when COVID hit, but comparables mean absolutely nothing in this market anymore. I get asked this a lot from my clients, you know, what are the comps? What can you tell me? You know, where do you think the market's going to go? It's really anybody's guess, but from what I'm experiencing personally is my buyers are becoming fatigued. They're getting sick of doing the holding offers, competing against, you know, 21 offers. Speaking of that, with the fatigue, we are seeing, you know, something that was 21 offers, we're now seeing 7. That doesn't mean that the prices are changing in terms of what it's selling over. We're just seeing less people are coming to the table now. You know, there's been a lot of talk that there's going to be an interest rate increase. I think there will. There needs to be some sort of correction in the market to, you know, not deter people from buying homes, but at least slow this down a little bit. I do think pricing is going to remain steady up here in Muskoka. They are calling for still a 16% increase in pricing. I think it's going to keep holding on where it is. I do think offer presentation will start to die off as the buyers start to retract a little bit, but it's anyone's guess. But this is what's going on in the market up here right now. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mandy. That is quite the frenzy. 64% increase. So that is a. Can we chat about inventory a little bit on that note? Who are you seeing selling? Is it rentals that are turning over and then maybe selling for quite a bit of a lift and moving elsewhere? Is there not a lot of inventory? So
we're seeing a lot of estate sales currently. There's an aging population. You know, it's the kids don't want to hold on to it. They're looking at the market. They know they can make money. So we're seeing a lot of those, a lot of POAs. We are seeing rentals divesting themselves of their investment, especially with new laws being passed in certain municipalities up here. A lot of places like Huntsville, you have to apply for a license to have a short-term rental. They won't allow a short-term rental in a flood zone. A lot of out-of-town agents, unfortunately, don't know this. We're seeing, you know, a lot more townships getting on board with this. Perry Sound has it as well. So, you know, as these laws start being passed, or these bylaws, I think we're going to see more rentals coming up for sale. You know, just because people obviously can't be renting them out short term if they're not going to be using them for personal use as well, or they don't want to jump through the hoops for it. But, you know, we're just seeing a lot of people taking advantage of the market, especially now that we've thawed out. The lakes are now thawed up here. It's an early spring market for us now that we don't have any snow. We didn't get any snow last night either. But we're definitely seeing people taking advantage of things that maybe they've been sitting on for 10 years that they've had vacant, that they thought, you know what, why not?
Yeah, makes sense. And if you have a buyer in this current market, what are your recommendations for them in terms of expectations, how to land the purchase? it must be an interesting conversation.
It is a very interesting conversation. Biggest thing is go get pre-approved. We're finding a lot of buyers coming to us saying, you know, I want a cottage, I want this, I want that, but it's what can you afford? I like to be completely transparent with my buyers. I tell them patience is key right now. That's the biggest thing. If they can be patient and, you know, just kind of stay the course with me, I will try my best to find them something. A lot of times it's finding a unicorn, but I have helped quite a few clients this year and last year get their dream waterfront properties. It just took, you know, maybe a bit longer than it would have normally.
Certainly makes sense. If there's anyone in the audience that is interested in learning more information, how best can they contact?
They can reach me through email, Instagram. I'm sure we can share my credentials afterwards, phone, text, carrier pigeon.
Don't wait too long with the carrier pigeon, I'd imagine.
I know.
But obviously everything presentation for both parties, including contact information. But to Daniel, with that latest development regarding city bylaws allowing laneway housing here in Hamilton, say I have a home in Hamilton, I'm interested in working with you on a tiny home to add to my property. What's the kind of the best first steps? Do I go to my local planner? What are those first steps there?
First of all, a clarification there, Ben. They actually got rid of the laneway suite bylaw and replaced it with the garden suite bylaw, which means that you don't need a laneway anymore. It's literally any property.
I see. Even better.
It used to be just laneway, and Toronto's following suit with that as well. But you can certainly go talk to your planner, but at this point right now, they voted in favor last night. It was a draft. Not all of the final wording is out, and neither does anyone know how the different departments are going to interpret that yet. So I would imagine you would call your planner and they won't even know how to answer it. So for the next little bit, it's going to be kind of tricky and figure it out as we go kind of thing. But we can take care of that for you as well. I also have a design company that takes care of all the permitting for the tiny homes. So not only do we manufacture them, but I have the other company that takes care of all the permitting for it. So we can certainly look into all of that for you. We have a workshop where we work through that with the client to figure out, go do all the city research and figure out exactly what people are going to have to jump through to make it happen on their property and design within their specific. Either or.
Awesome. Way to contact you as well if there are any questions on this.
Don't call me, I won't answer. The phone just keeps ringing. Email and someone will get back to you. That is the best way. Our website has a contact form on it. Pretty shortly, I think next week or so, our new CRM is going to be up on the website. So it's just going to take you through a series. And you're going to pop up at a webinar where we'll chat face to face. That's the best way to get all the information.
Amazing. Well, that wraps up our timing for Hamilton's first quarter market update presented by Forge & Foster. I want to thank both of our presenters today. Certainly very interesting and great insight into something that I think we're all ready for if the snow would ever go away. But again, thank you for your presentations today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. That wraps it up for today, and we'll see you in the second quarter.